It's live on Ustream, YouTube now. So let me start recording. One people, one soul, one destiny. One people, one soul, one destiny. We got to keep on pushing forward. So long, samurai. One people, one soul, one destiny. So long, samurai. One people, one soul, one destiny. Beautiful. I like that, man.
Thank you, thank you.
It's live on YouTube.
It is?
Yeah.
Good. What do you say? It's live on. It's live on. We live?
YouTube.
YouTube. Live on YouTube. Okay. Okay. Greetings, everyone. Greetings, brothers and sisters in West Papua, brothers and sisters in the African world. I am Baba Mosi Matsimala, President of the Woodson Banneker Jackson Bay Division of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League, Rehabilitating Committee 2020. We are based here in Washington, D.C. And tonight, we are having our Freedom Friday Forum for May of 2021. And our guest is the Honorable Raki App, who represents today the people of West Papua, or the organization that is struggling for freedom of West Papua. I'm here with the Vice President of the Division 330, the Woodson Banneker Jackson Bay Division, and Congo, Africa. Yes, Baba Congo, Africa. On board as well is Brother Zama Cook. He is our communications minister. And we have our technical officer, Harold Goodrich, who is managing and monitoring our broadcasts. All right, so first of all, I want to thank you for being here with us this evening. This is a very, very important forum because we're going to discuss the West Papuan situation. Let me do this. Yes. All right. Thank you very much, Brother Rocky, for that. Today we're going to. Oh yeah. Who was that? Who was that playing, Brother Rocky? Who was the artist of that?
These were.
Sure, it's a group of guys, right?
Yeah, it's a group of guys. It's a combined group of musicians from the Melanesian region, and they joined with musicians from West Papua, the western part of the island of New Guinea, and the eastern part. So it's a collaboration of indigenous voices from the region.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, well, you know, let me first. I did introduce you, Brother Raki App, and before. Oh, we getting music again. So can you shut? I have to shut that down, all right? Oh, brother. Okay, can barely hear myself here. All
There
right.
you go.
Is it still playing? Can you hear it?
It's gone. Yeah.
All right. Um. Oh, that's out a good one. All right. Brother Raki, glad to have
Yes.
you. And the first thing I'm going to do is, since you're the representative here tonight for the movement, is to tell me a little bit of yourself and how did you get to where you are in the movement?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, on behalf of the organization for having me. And yeah, my name is Rakiab, and I'm the spokesperson for Free West Papua campaign, which is the organization launched for a decade, much longer than a decade ago, by our independence leader, His Excellency, Mr. Benny Wenda. And my journey basically started as freedom fighter, as activist, as you can call me as well. The moment that Indonesia, the Indonesian colonizers assassinated my father Arnold Ab, who was an anthropologist and a famous musician in West Papua, just 4 months before I was born. So the end of my father's life was the start of my life. Becoming, a storyteller, freedom fighter, who continued my father's mission, which is educating the indigenous people of West Papua about their identity, their culture, and the country. And that is what I did. So we fled our homeland. I think we're 36 years ago now, and now I'm based in The Hague, the Netherlands. And when I was a teenager, I met His Excellency Mr. Benny Wenda, who is currently the interim president of our government. And that was the moment that changed my life. Meeting him, he endorsed us to become new leaders for our people, to tell the story, to break the silence in the global community. And that is how I transformed into the person I became today, which is a indigenous storyteller from West Papua, and educating people about the genocide which is going on, the apartheid which is still going on, and the colonialism which is still going on in our country.
Well, thank you for that. And that's an interesting story. And I suppose most people, would you call yourself then a no a refugee, or what would you say yourself is? Because
Yeah. Basically, I am a political refugee now living in the Netherlands. Absolutely. Unfortunately, I should say.
All right. Now, let me ask you, now that you said something about yourself, and then you mentioned the movement, and you mentioned Benny Wenda, who is the leader of the movement. Tell me something about what's happening today, because I heard that there's an official government for West Papua now.
Yes, absolutely. It was launched, I think, December last year, but we go back a couple more years ago when the United Liberation Movement for West Papua was established with the support of the small island state Vanuatu in Melanesia. And they, under their facilitation and supervision, the three biggest liberation movements in West Papua united under this one name, the United Liberation Movement. And so from that moment, I think it was in 2015, if I'm not wrong, since that moment, the liberation movement tried to lobby governments to find support for the right to self-determination for the people of West Papua, who was hijacked by Indonesia and under supervision of the United Nations. So since that moment, 2015, we have building momentum and support from several countries, especially in the Pacific region. And the momentum is getting bigger and bigger. So last year, they've launched this temporary government on December 1, the 1st of December. and that, you know, just to make sure to the Indonesian government that we are ready to take back control of our country, which belongs to the West Papuans. In general lines, this is what I can say about the current interim government of the people of West Papua. You're muted, brother, Mr. President. You're muted, I think.
Sorry about that. Yes, you did. You mentioned that little part of history of the movement, but you know, people, you know, here in the United States, here in Washington D.C., where I am based, especially African people of African descent, Black people, and people in general have no idea. Here in the United States, we don't get news of what's going on in West Papua. If you don't go on social media and if you don't know about it, you would never know that this is the kind of stuff that's going on in West Papua, that you have a military occupation of a people who had their independence. Now, give me a little background on how this occupation happened, if you can.
Absolutely. Is it okay, Mr. President, for me to share my screen with a short presentation? Is that okay?
Yes.
Perfect. So I will give the audience a brief update about how the occupation started. All right, let me see. Share screen. Yeah, there you go. All right, I hope, yeah, you can see something right now.
Yes, yes. Has the world's richest island flora. My goodness.
So this is what nature.com describes about our homeland, the island of New Guinea, right above Australia. And I will tell the audience why this island has been kept a secret for more than 59 years after the colonized Indonesia came here. This is the most richest island on flora and fauna. It's the world's largest tropical island as well. And the reason why it has been kept a secret is because of the colonial past and much more things which I will add. So as we can see, West Papua nowadays is part of the Indonesia we know today. But before that, West Papua was a former Dutch colony. So a small European country, as we know today as the Kingdom of the Netherlands, was the former colonizer of this entire territory, as we know, as at that time known as the Dutch East Indies. So from the 1700s, 1600s, the Dutch invaded the territory and they shared this island in two, and the eastern part was a British colony. And not much later, it became part of Australia, the right part of the island, Papua New Guinea, as we know, is independent state of Papua New Guinea. And they become independent in 1975. So the eastern part, our brothers and sisters who live on the eastern part of the island have the freedom, just give the freedom from Australia, but with a huge price. And I will mention that later. But West Papua became part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands after Indonesian independence in 1945 and 1949. The Netherlands prepared the West Papuans previously towards the right to self-determination. So they gave the West Papuans the Morning Star flag, as we can see it off there. In the beginning of 1960s, they prepared the West Papuans with their own army. We got our first government in 1961. Until the United States, and this is why people in the United States, and especially our African brothers and sisters, didn't know about this, because the government didn't want them to know it. And the reason is that they are the ones who created the media blackout until today. And I will mention it more. We got the Vietnam War at that time playing there, and they didn't want West Papua to become a kind of second Vietnam, so they forced the Dutch to hand over the western part of the island to the Indonesia we know today. And that is, so the West Papuans paid the price for the geopolitical games in the interest of the United States. And in 1969, they have, under supervision of the United Nations, they gave us a so-called, referendum, where they handpicked 1,026 men on gunpoint and forced them to vote for integration into the Indonesia of today. And that was the referendum. But if they didn't vote for Indonesia, the voters, all the 1,026 men were killed, including their families. So, and the UN, the United Nations, who facilitated this, allowed this to happen. So that was the moment the West Papuans was hijacked the right to self-determination until this day. Under the supervision of the US, the Netherlands, and the UN, this international fraud happened. So we know nowadays why this case is so much sensitivity and why they wanted to keep this a secret, because they are all involved in it. So let's see what is located over there. Besides it's the world's largest tropical island, it houses the world's largest gold mine in the world. It houses the world's second largest copper mine in the world. And it is it houses the second/third largest rainforest in the world as well. And we got, British Petroleum and all kinds of Western corporations exploiting and destroying our resources, stealing our resources, kill our lands, livelihoods, and our people. More than 500,000 indigenous West Papuans have been killed the last 59 years. This is an apartheid and colonialism today. And that's why they keep this a secret. Talking about, and the racism of this, global north is still there. They're campaigning, the so-called environmental organizations, about the orangutan in Indonesia, and at the same time, 500,000 Black Melanesian West Papuans are being killed in their own land, in the silence of the global community, while they are stealing our resources. So this is where Black Lives Matter and Papuan Lives Matter joined the global movement during our brother George Floyd's, protesters all across the world. But this is the life of indigenous West Papuans when they are born, seeing their, the tropical ancient land destroyed by palm oil companies. These are images from the last 5 to 10 years. So animals are becoming more worth for the environmental organization, for the campaigns, than our human lives of our children and our future generation. This is happening right now as we speak. So this is like, this is what I always use from the 4.6 billion years of, the Earth exists. We just got 10 years time to save it. If you follow the climate change discussion, and what's it all about? What the UN scientists are saying. If we wanted to solve climate change and those biodiversity crisis, we must care of, indigenous lives, indigenous rights, such as those in the global north, in Africa and South America, and those in West Papua. And I think this is such a story that the global north must understand. This is a report of Amnesty International of 2018, and the title says everything. It don't need explanation. Don't bother, just let him die. This is how Indonesian authority, allows West Papuan to be killed. And the genocide is going on in the global silence. So that is why the United Liberation for West Papua is encouraging now, creating a momentum. We are breaking the deadly silence and finding support. So it's all about capitalism, colonialism, and racism still going on in West Papua. So that's a short, brief update about the past, colonialism. We went from the Netherlands to Indonesia, and now this genocide and ecocide against the people is going on, ongoing.
Yeah, yes, my brother. It's just a shame. I mean, I do recall in my younger days, and as a matter of fact, not recently, someone asked me about how come I'm saying these things about Indonesia when you had a progressive leader, and Indonesia should be a progressive country because of Sukarno and because of the Bandung agreement, and so people are not associating that because at some point Malcolm X spoke of the Bandung Conference, and some people that just feel that because Indonesia was part of this movement of non-aligned nations, then it's probably a progressive nation. But can you say something about what's the difference between then and now?
You know, I think the gold mine changes their attitude. I think the resources changes their attitude, and you know the idealism of fighting colonial, because you know I support them. Their fight against the Dutch, you know, former colonizer, is totally right. But you know the strange thing is that the way they fight against the Dutch, you know, colonial power is exactly the same thing which we are doing against them now. So it's like they are, because they've taken over, you know, this colonial attitude from the former colonizers and using it now to suppress West Papuans, but also other indigenous peoples in Indonesia, such as the Moluccans and Aceh. So it's like I think money changed the attitude, and that's what, you know, a lot of things. That's, you know, one of the things that change, you know, certain governments who take power before they were so-called progressive, right? That's the, you know, that's, I don't know the real intention, but this is, you know, we can see that the moment they signed this agreement with this U.S. mining corporation, Freeport-McMoRan, one of the world's largest mining corporation, that was the moment that I think the progressiveness, you know, stopped, and they changed into, you know, these bandits, global bandits, criminals, just extraction and killing for profit.
Now, in that sense, Sukarno was overthrown, wasn't he? Sukarno. So anyway, the difference in the government now is that there was a military coup, and it can't be that it's the same government that at the time West Papua got its independence. It was it Sukarno during that time that invaded? Was he there?
Yeah, absolutely. It was under the leadership. Yeah, absolutely, Mr. President. It was under the leadership of Sukarno at the time.
Okay, so although he had that progressive, that view of the world that he was progressive, he wasn't progressive enough to leave West Papua alone.
Exactly. Unfortunately, that is true.
Now, there's another issue I have to bring up now that's happening in West Papua, and that is the issue of transmigration, or whatever I think they call it.
Yeah.
Wherein you know, Indonesians are colonizing, and they're bringing the Indonesians into West Papua by the hundreds of thousands, as far as I've heard. What's the situation? How is that going? I mean, how are you going to have a plebiscite for independence during a time when all these people are in your country colonizing? And how are you going to vote for independence when you have that sort of situation?
Yeah, this is really urgent, of course, and I think as you described, since the moment Indonesia invaded West Papua with a military operation under the supervision of President Sukarno at the time, in 1963 to be exact, 1st of May 1963, they invaded West Papua, never left. And what they started much later was a national transmigration policy. And it didn't stop until today. So the result is that we become a minority in our own country in this 59 years of occupation. So plus the 500,000, you know, men, women, and children they've killed, we become a minority, and the numbers are, you know, saying that there are like 1.2 million indigenous West Papuans versus 1.3 million transmigrants from other parts of Indonesia. These are, you know, gross numbers that I've heard about. So that's urgent, right? The only thing they need is time, and then we will disappear as you know, Black Melanesian people who lived there for hundreds, if not thousands of years. under the eyes of the global community who facilitate this colonialism and genocide against indigenous people of West Papua. So it's urgent. It's shocking.
I would say that, but since I'm seeing that the movement is asking for the United Nations to come in and for there to be a vote for self-determination. Now, what I'm saying is that how are you going to have this when your population is now less than the transmigrated population?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So, as I've been told by a lawyer who is, an expertise on this case, if there would be a referendum, it will confirm the arrangement at that time in 1969, which stated that only indigenous people of the island could vote. So there should be a kind of academic research under supervision if the referendum will be here, that transmigrant will be excluded because of the transmigration policy. It's not fair anymore. So we will have the same circumstances as mentioned in 1969, where indigenous West Papuans only could have a opportunity to vote, because otherwise we will lose. So and that is I think academics should talk about it with UN mechanisms as at the moment it will happen. But I think even if the referendum wouldn't be there, I think the right to self-determination is even a stronger case without having a referendum. I think our case is very strong because, right to self-determination is an international law. It's a human right. And the nation belongs to the indigenous people of West Papua. There's no discussion about that. So I think we can, skip the referendum. But if it would be there, we will have the same circumstances as demanded in 1969. Something like that.
Yes, because my view has been that why are they asking for a referendum when the situation is what it is today, with being the population being overrun by migrants now.
Exactly.
So you have a question? Well,
a couple of things about the colonization that's going on. I heard that the schooling there for indigenous people is bad and low, second class. But also, I think all the blacks in most of the Pacific islands have been neglected and have been exploited. Yours happen to be the richest because you got gold and copper, etc., etc. And what it is instead of the resources being an asset, it's almost a liability. It's almost a curse. So it's hard to get those guys out. It look like from just reading, it look like all the Pacific Islands are for your independence, and you're depending on the UN. Is the African Union helping at all?
Mr. Vice President, I think that's really true. So the school system, there's not a real school system where indigenous West Papuans could benefit from. Only the rich transmigrant, children can go to school, and there's no healthcare system where indigenous West Papuans can use from the facilitation. And we can see the same things in other Pacific countries, indeed. But yes, the respective countries in the Pacific region have a big voice for what is happening in West Papua, the human rights violation, the demanding a United Nations fact-finding mission, including with more than 83 other states, including the African Union and a lot of countries in South America. But we don't have that much voice from leaders within the African Union, who are very vocal on the United Nations General Assembly, for example, when they mention in the statement about the situation in West Papua. And that is something that the United Liberation for Movement for West Papua is focusing on. The first countries we are expecting to support us, which they did in the early 60s, when the member states within the United Nations could vote whether West Papua should be on the United Nations decolonization list, and several African countries, including Nigeria and Congo, they voted for West Papua at the time. So we hope that the current leaders, will raise their voice stronger than they have done the last 59 years. And they will support, for example, the work of the small island state of Vanuatu, who has very little resources and who run his country, their government, with aid from Australia and other countries. And that doesn't make them really strong. So we need, for example, a Congo government who should support West Papua and our diplomatic missions internationally. And that is something we are working as we speak to make sure that the entire African Union be one big voice for us to end the colonization of West Papua.
When the Dutch left,
Mhm.
Can you tell me the racial makeup of West Papua at that point? What it was, approximately?
Yeah, 800,000 indigenous West Papuans. When they left West Papua in 1962, handed over to Indonesia. And to compare it, as I mentioned, on the eastern part of the island, the independent nation of Papua New Guinea, in 1975, we had almost the same amount of people. So in Papua New Guinea, you get 1 million, and West Papua also around 1 million. Now we just have 1.2 million in West Papua, and the independent country of Papua New Guinea got almost 7 million people. So they increased with 6 million because the circumstance, they weren't oppressed. They could have their own system, but we were oppressed, killed, and threatened with this transmigration policy. So you can see an ethnocide happening under the eyes of the Indonesian government.
Is it being practiced like apartheid?
Absolutely. Just Google human rights violations West Papua, and you will see all the images. You will see the videos appear committed by Indonesian military. Happening just a few months ago, a couple years ago. West Papuans slaughtered, elderly hit by military in their villages, children raped. This is not history for us. It's happening right now.
I mean, for us to be here in the United States, and we shouldn't be surprised that we're not hearing, and there's a blackout on that sort of thing, considering the kind of investments they have in the gold and copper mines, and the influence of these capitalists on the political parties in this country. But at the same time, these are human beings, and to just ignore, and I'm saying just ignore this kind of thing happening is very sad. What saddens me is that we have black Congress people, black representation coming from our people who some of them know of the situation, and a few of them, I think, would support some action, but most of them are not saying anything. They're not doing anything, and it's not that they have not been informed. You see, so one of the things we're trying to do here at the Woodson Banneker Jackson Bay Division, the UNIA, is to get them to be more informed, and you have someone here, Herman Waingai. I don't know if you know Herman, and he has been to the Congress several times speaking to Congress people. So it's not that some of them don't know, but we don't hear. I don't know if it's it includes the blackout that we're not hearing, but we don't hear anything from our representatives here in Congress. And so we have to do what we're doing now. We we have to also do in social media is to bring this story, bring this situation to the forefront to the people of the United States. And we, you know, it looks like a lot of work to be done, but hopefully we will get there at some point. In any event, I can assure you, brother, that we're not going to stop. We're gonna keep on working, and we're gonna keep on working. And I hope this is not the last time. We're not closing, but I still have a few other questions. Australia. How you're right next door to Australia? What I mean, I know they're selling arms to to Indonesia, and I guess they have other investments, or Indonesia is investing in Australia. I don't know what the situation is, but there was a lot of support for what's this
East Timor,
East Timor, coming from Australia, I think. And what's wrong with them supporting West Papua? What's the difference here?
I think the difference is the gold mine and the economic relations once again. So as soon as money and profit comes into the game, attitude change. People became devils, and that is what you see in Australia. Australia is one of the most racist countries in the world, and especially if you look at their government's policy towards the most closest neighbor, which is West Papua, just 250 miles from their shore. And they are now, the last weeks and it was good that they exposed a lot about the situation in Israel and Palestine, but the genocide on the doorstep, they are silent about it. And that's because they make a lot of profit from the resources in West Papua, and they got an agreement. And this is a big disgrace. A country who was a member within the United Nations Human Rights Council, who was even the chair, I think, a couple years ago, and signed an agreement with Indonesia to not talk about what is happening in West Papua. It's an agreement. They call it the Lombok Treaty. And in that agreement, they agreed to each other to not talk about what is happening in West Papua, to not talk about the human rights violations. So this is, the biggest hypocrite in the world with all their friends, right? They have double morals, double standards, right? It's not new. And how they, of course, it was good that they supported the situation in East Timor, our brothers and sisters over there, and and this is the interesting part, which I'm optimistic in, and why I strongly believe, and I'm glad that I'm here, is that moment came after huge people, the public pressure in Australia rised up. So there was an uprising in exposure within the media and the people in Australia, and therefore the government had to, take a certain position. And that is basically what West Papuan people have done in the entire Pacific region. Our challenge is to break down the global silence about what is happening in West Papua, and that is what our campaign did. As soon as our story came out in the Pacific region, and it just started for about 10 years ago, from nothing, we got the entire Pacific nation, and the government's putting West Papua on the political agenda. And that is what we are trying to do now as well. And I think if you look at the momentum in the US with the Black Lives Matter protests, which went globally, those are the momentums that we can hook in and jump in and educate them to give it a more international dynamic. Black Lives Matter is about, extraction of resources in Africa. It's about extraction, oppression of Black people in all across the world, and West Papua is such a case. And this is the dynamic that this capitalist, people and corporations are afraid of, that we link the root causes of this institutional racism in the first place, against people of color, Black people. But after that, the destructive corporations occupying people across borders and keep it a secret. And that is where we can make them pain, where we can put pressure. And that is where we need to inform our, Black congressmen and politicians to make sure that they will be our voice. And the momentum is there. We have shown that it is possible, but we need to inform them and increase public pressure. And that is what I'm really optimistic in with this opportunity.
Yes, my brother, and we will take this opportunity to aid you in that process. Now, here's another thing that's happening here in the United States. We are celebrating the Asia Pacific Month right here in the United States. And I want to tell you something. West Papua is in the Pacific, right? The Papuan people are in the, let me say it's not just West Papua. It's all the Melanesian.
Yes.
It is in the Pacific.
Absolutely.
We're hearing about everybody else in the news in this Asia Pacific month, except Melanesians. So now
there's one other place. Diego Garcia, the British and the United States have captured that place. But the U.S. sells Indonesia about $2 billion worth of weapons almost every year. Apache and jets, Apache helicopter and jets, which most likely that's what's used against East Timor uprisings.
Absolutely.
West Papuan people.
Right.
Yeah.
The enforcement, is it a police enforcement or is it a military enforcement in West Papua?
It's a combined. They're both there. So we got a huge police force and a huge military force. It's West Papua is described as one of the most militarized zone in the world. People don't know it. It's one of the most, if you compare citizens versus, security personnel, West Papua is one of the most militarized, territories in the world. And I know that why the US is keeping it secret, because they, this one single gold mine, the world's largest, is the single biggest taxpayer to the Indonesian government. So I know what it's at stake. I know what kind of interest it is. But, we are not going to pay the price for your, profit. So you can, you can build your country and your government and feed your people while our people are being killed and slaughtered. People have to know that. So the only challenge is to educate, and we're going to crush their credibility. And that's why they keep it a secret, because everybody's profiting of it. The US, Australia, the Netherlands, the British are selling weapons and train Indonesian soldiers so they can continue the extractive industries, steal our resources. That's what they do. And that's why they don't want people in the global north, and especially people of color, to understand. Because if that happened, they will have a problem. Because if the Black Lives Matters in the US and globally understand what is happening, they will understand there's another apartheid going on. And they will put pressure. And when we unite, they have a problem. And that is what we are focusing on. Because it will happen. We are confident. It will happen because we have mobilized ourselves, the West Papuans, in the last 10 years' time, without freedom, with very little resources, with one of the most militarized zones in the world. We are capable of organizing ourselves and creating change. And that is the optimism I carry every single day. If we can realize that the only thing we have to do is educate people across borders. And that is what we are doing today.
Brother, can you talk a little about the lockdown in Papua and the COVID-19, lack of medical supplies and whatnot?
Yeah. Thank you, Minister of Communication, Brother Zama Cook. Absolutely. I think, we got the crisis above a crisis because, we like prisoners in our own country. And now, we don't control who comes in and who goes out. It's the colonizer who does that. And they don't care about what we think. So that's a huge challenge for us regarding COVID and all the people who come, migrants from other parts of Indonesia. The business continues. When the Indonesian government, controlled the capital, Jakarta, they allowed ships and planes coming into West Papua. So they didn't care about, the virus coming to our country, to our territory, to our people and villages. So this is, a colonial attitude towards our people. So it's another threat above all the different threats where the West Papuans are being faced on a daily basis. And what I didn't mention is that since day one, Indonesia occupied West Papua, foreign media have been banned. NGOs have been banned until this day. Foreign media are not allowed to report in West Papua.
Right. Right. I saw that.
Yes.
Okay.
I've noticed that the activities, the anti-occupation activities seem to have increased among the young people. Is this in West Papua? But I also have been seeing some things coming out of the Indonesian territory itself. From students who from West Papua who are over there. What about the Indonesian? Is there any kind of Indonesian support from the Indonesian people? Do you have empathy from anyone in Indonesia?
Yes,
so you
yes,
don't have to
Mr.
call
President.
names, but
Yeah, I think we can say that there's really interesting things are happening since a couple of years where, Indonesian brothers and sisters, supported our, the brothers and sisters in West Papua, to say so. And that's a really good and positive thing, we support, because we need the momentum in Indonesia itself to increase for the liberation movement and the right to self-determination in West Papua. And that is what we saw with Indonesian students collaborating with West Papuan students in, for example, in Jakarta or in other parts of Indonesia. And in 2019, we had this nationwide uprising against racism when, after, a so-called incident by Indonesian security forces where they chant words against West Papuan students on the dormitory in Surabaya, chanting, monkeys, go back to your country, dogs. And that movie went viral. And since that moment, we got an entire nation uprising in all the cities in West Papua, in front of the Indonesian palace as well. So we clearly see that, people are not fair anymore to stand up and speak about what is happening in West Papua. And that is the momentum which I mentioned before, that the West Papuans are fearless, because, they have very clear in mind that, looking at the numbers, 500,000 deaths, a minority in your own country, sorry, man, I just have to drink something.
no problem.
That when they don't act, they will disappear in, 20, 30 years. That's the outcome. That's what the numbers are saying. So, they aren't fair anymore. And they they become resilient and fearless. And that is the momentum which we are seeing right now, spreading all across West Papua to different cities in Indonesia. And that is the momentum we are talking about. When they find the courage there, and the commitment and ways to unite and to become such a big movement, that is where we have to do our part as well. And that is what we are seeing right now in the entire Pacific region. Here in Europe, more and more people are finding out and playing their part. And that is exactly what Indonesia is afraid of. And we're going to increase that pressure. It's happening right now with this conversation. It is already increasing, because this is what they don't want to see happen.
What about the state of political prisoners?
They're there. So, they are put in prison, and I can't describe the exact situation, but it's poor, right? They don't have the same facilities and rights as prisoners here in the Netherlands or in the US. So, yeah, we always worried about them, that, they got enough food, that they're not being tortured in the prison, but they're there.
Yeah.
Hello, Baba, this is Arturo. How's everybody? I am very happy to hear about this, because I actually don't know anything about Papua. Really, it's the first time I heard about it. It's incredible. I know geography very well, but I have not heard about that. So I'm sure there are many places in the world that I don't really know, and I don't know enough about it. But I'm very happy that you're talking about this. Let me ask you something. Do you have anybody in the United States that we can contact that are from your community, from Papua, that we can contact, because I think part of the thing here is that we have to do a lot of things here in the United States to bring it up, to actually work to make sure that Papua is known by everybody, as many people in the United States as possible, and as many of the Africans, because we really don't know enough about it, and I don't know enough about it, so I need that, Bob, I think we need to think about, do we need to do more meetings like this, as many as possible, and we need to have, if you have anybody in the United States that wants to help out with this thing, that would be a good thing to develop a committee. We need to go to the Africans in the United States Senate and House, and we need to talk to them about this. And we need to have more. We need to develop a committee here that can start pulling this thing together and build the momentum that we need to do, because you guys are going through a lot of problems there, and we can be dormant. We are too dormant right now. So let's see. I think we need to really organize here and to bring it up. Just bringing that up, just bringing the name. A lot of people don't know about that.
Exactly.
And this is a moment to do that. All these efforts that we're trying to do here on Black Lives Matter and everything, we need to take advantage of that and bring it up, because that the international thing needs to be looked at in many areas. So if we fight here, we're fighting here, but that's not enough. I mean, the corporations are hitting us here and hitting us there. So
exactly.
we really
But
need to
Arturo, we will get together and discuss that, and some connections and some of what we can continue to do. So you'll hear from both myself and Baba Congo in relations with that. So be sure, and I know you know quite a few people who were active in the East. I keep forgetting his name. In the East Timor situation, if those very same people who were active in that East Timor activities against the Indonesians, if you can work to pull them together again, that will be something that we can look forward to. Brother Arturo, by the way, Brother Raki, is an activist, a trade union activist, a long time trade union activist, and
amazing.
And getting him as an ally would be a very good thing at this point. So
all the way back to South Africa, Newton.
Thank you so much, Brother Arthur Griffiths. That you give me really hope, because that is exactly the momentum we are seeking for, and it is already happening by having this conversation. But we see the impact it can have when this story comes to people and individuals and organizations who know the route to those who have in power, and just by sharing the story, we know the change will happening at that moment. We just plant the seed. That is what we do in the Netherlands. That is how we change the entire narrative and political circumstances in the Pacific region. And now having 83 countries. But when the United States moves and a black community moves there, that is where Indonesia is really afraid of. And that is where Black Lives Matter get a huge international dynamic, because these corporations will be hit on the levels, on the both fronts, where they're oppressing and killing people. Absolutely true. Thank you so much. This is really, really wonderful.
Now, Brother Raki, going to, I'm talking about empathy. Are you getting anything coming out of some of those Asian countries, on the continent or the Pacific Islands,
or New Zealand?
Yeah. We in several Asian countries. The only country I can mention is a strong progressive movement in the Philippines, who is very vocal, a grassroots campaign vocal about West Papuans, but also right to self-determination to people all across the world. So they're doing an amazing job. And in East Timor, we got the brothers and sister movements there supporting our cause. And in the Pacific region, I think all the people, we got a huge civil society movement all across the Pacific, and they are very vocal about the right of self-determination. They're basically the ones who are putting West Papua constantly on the government's agenda, and that is really a good thing to happen. So we see the power of civil society and grassroots organizations, putting pressure on certain governments, and put West Papua on the political agenda. Regarding New Zealand, yes, we see also grassroots movements over there. Certain politicians, for example, in the Greens Party, who are very vocal about, they're the progressive ones who are vocal about the right to self-determination, doing a good job the last 5 years. But the government itself is very lax. They have strong, economic relations and trade agreements with Indonesia. And as we speak right now, they have like military dues with Indonesia. So that's a thing which is going on right now. We need more pressure in New Zealand from the indigenous people over there and the progressive parties to make sure that New Zealand will stop, because it's part of the Pacific, and all the Pacific Island nations are caring about, the West Papuans, except Australia and New Zealand. These are the, still, white governed, white guided governments who are there just to make, to be there for the corporations. And that is a thing we need to try to shift. But we're optimistic. We see the momentum increasing every day.
The brothers, I wanted to say to Baba that it's big. Now that you mentioned Philippines, there's a big Philippine group growing in Washington D.C. right now. Big, large, pretty large. And they are having a lot of demonstrations about what is happening in Philippines. And it would be an interesting thing for us to invite him to the next meeting like this, or maybe to see if they can hear you a little bit more, and maybe they can unite with you here also, and we can use some of the forces that they have to build a momentum here about Papua. So I think it would be an interesting thing.
Absolutely, brother Arthur. That would be really interesting from my side.
Thank you, brother Arturo. This is not going to happen overnight, but
absolutely.
As all struggles for freedom, nothing comes easy, or you probably wouldn't respect it. But we will continue with this. Hopefully we this is not going to be the only forum we have with West Papua. We do this on a monthly basis, so But if this is May, the 5th month, and we can have a second one sometime in the latter 6 months of the year to see what progress. Perhaps we can do that one in November, just before the December 4th. So is that the Independence Day celebration?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the Independence Day. Yeah.
Well, during November we have this. We have to check the date. The Friday may fall on that weekend. We have our Thanksgiving celebration here. But whether so or not, I think we're gonna have one in November. If you can put that on your calendar. We'll be coming back for November. Okay.
Absolutely a pleasure for me to be here and come back for sure.
Yeah. All right. Now, United Nations. I know a lot of your movement has been going to the United Nations over and over. I see that all the time. Your representative, even Benny Wendell, was here, how do you feel about what's happening with the United Nations and what's coming out of that?
Yeah, well, they clearly have failed, to do their duty regarding what is happening in West Papua. And from day one, they were the ones who facilitated this so-called referendum. They were the ones who monitor this international fraud happening and allowing it to happen. It was the UN who facilitated the signing of the agreement between the Netherlands and Indonesia at the headquarters in New York. So they were involved from day one, and they're being silent until this day. So something is wrong over there, right? And it is their involvement. So we know the sensitivity of their involvement, because their credibility will disappear when people hear about the story. And that is the cocktail of, why they are hesitating. But that is their problem. Our challenge is to make sure that the people know about it, and that they should have a certain position. Because as soon as people know about it, they should have a position. That is how pressure from civil society or global community works. And the only chance to make them speak is to get as much as countries within the UN to use their voice. And we are counting on the African Union to be one big voice. But we also are counting on our brothers and sisters in the US to uphold, the president and what is it? The vice president in the US right now, right?
Wow.
Who could be a strong voice for West Papua. We need the Native American Minister of
Indigenous people of the US as well.
Yeah.
And yeah.
To be a voice. So I see a huge opportunities, also challenges, right? It's as you mentioned, Mr. President, this is not going to happen on one night, but I strongly believe in how we end slavery, how we end colonialism, apartheid in South Africa. We can do this once again. The only thing we have to do, we need to find people who find the moral responsibility to be a voice. And that is what I strongly believe. Our brothers and sisters are there. We just need to bring the story to them and use their voice in the respective country to put pressure and create a movement.
Let me say this thing. This is Arturo again. Let me say this thing. You're in Papua right now?
No, brother. I'm located in The Hague, the Netherlands.
In the Netherlands?
Yes.
It would be an interesting thing for you to come here. And we can probably, with other groups, we can organize you to come here, so we can go to the Congress and to different places and make this become an important issue.
That would be amazing.
So that would be one of the ways to do. And we have to find a way of getting some funds to see if you can come over and to, for at least a week or something, and you can come and visit a lot of organizations and also in Congress to see if we can build up the momentum and the idea, because people don't know about this.
No, exactly.
And so it really needs to start somewhere. And it would be a good thing if we can arrange with you to see if we can do that, to get the funds for you to come down and to start the process, man.
That sounds really amazing.
Brother Arturo, you just don't know what you started, because my brother sitting next to me is bobbing his head and saying, "Oh yeah, okay, Arturo, you got a lot of work to do coming up." Yes, 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 we do have quite a few people. Listen, it's all about raising consciousness.
Absolutely,
and it's just what Brother Arturo just said is necessary, because in bringing, coming to and speaking to different organizations, not just us, but even trade unions, any organization that will have an ear and will listen, because this is genocide that's going on.
Exactly.
You're talking about genocide everywhere else. There's genocide in West Papua.
Yeah.
And we just have to bring this to the attention, and especially to Black folks here who are, we know what genocide is. We
exactly.
know, I mean, it's nothing new to us.
So, unfortunately not.
And the fight has been going on over and over, all over the world. So, we've got issues in Latin America, we've got issues even on the continent of Africa. So, it's just the consciousness of folks got to be raised to that level.
Absolutely.
Where every day we can think of West Papua.
Yeah.
That's like me. I wake up in the morning and I think of West. It bothers me to that extent, because I go to, after reading about some of the things, and I'm on Facebook and I have friends, Facebook friends. I'm getting that information. And it's dumbfounding, how could this be happening? And we here in the United States, our news organizations are saying nothing.
Exactly.
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
I kid you not, my brother. There's absolutely nothing is being said.
Yeah.
So we if we can get the attention of the news media too, because putting them to shame is one way of getting their attention. So we have to find a way of doing that. And if we get a lot of the organizations that Brother Arturo were talking about, to get together and to have you here, and let's find a way to get you to, you're a very young person, and we need to get, you talk about Black Lives Matter. It's the young people who are out there.
Yeah.
And it's the young voice that we have to hear, it's telling us this story. And the young people listen to young people. And so we got to get your voice out here as much as possible. All right. So think about that, my brother. You got to
absolutely stand by. I'm stand by and looking forward, my brothers. This is really amazing. It was really amazing conversation I have. It gives me a lot of hope. Having this conversation with you, just being an ear, but also feeling, the commitment from all of you to, to think with us and immediately thinking about new opportunities. So that is basically why I, every single day wanting to tell the story, because the people are there, and that is where the change is starting. So thank you very much once again for having me. And I'm looking forward to collaborate more with peoples and organizations in the US, because that is where we can create a new momentum. I strongly believe that.
Well, thank you for accepting the invitation to be on, and for enlightening us to some of the issues that's going on with West Papua, Indonesia, being the military occupant, and whenever we get together as a people, some of the things we say is, if you're doing wrong to any one of our people anywhere, you're doing wrong to our people everywhere. That's just my way of saying it.
Absolutely agree. So, absolutely agree.
Committing genocide to Black people in West Papua should mean something to Black people everywhere. This is no joke. This is a serious matter. So, my brother, I thank you for being with us, and we will be on again. The invitation for November is on, and if you accept, we can be on again, and you can be sure that does not mean we may find another way to get you here even before then, and to work on other matters. One of the things we're having problems with is getting West Papua flags. we need to get some of those who have them around. I need to fly one on my car.
Please send me your addresses, and I'm gonna make sure you will have some flags and stickers en route as soon as possible.
That would be wonderful. I will do that. All right. Well, my brother, the UNIA, we do have a. The time, we wanted to. It's been over an hour, and you did promise an hour. So I thank you very much. So, we have our little rituals that we do. UNIA, either the beginning or the ending of any conversation or forum, and one of them is the pledge to the flag. You know what flag we fly? You know what is the UNIA flag? The flag that was created by the people, by the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League. That flag is the red, black, and green. The same flag that they use for Black Lives Matter and all those different things that people give it all kinds of names, Black Liberty flag and all. That's the flag of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League, known worldwide as the UNIA. That was the flag that was created by our ancestors in 1920, when they had a convention, and that flag was introduced as the flag for the people, for the UNIA, and it's being used everywhere. A lot of people, just like they don't know about West Papua, they don't know where that flag came from. They know that's the flag for Black people. So, but I want the flag for West Papua to be flown and to be known. Right here in the United States. And
I'm going to make sure it will arrive.
Doing some work here in Washington, D.C. to make sure that flag is known. All right. So I thank you for that offer, my brother. And we will close by doing this, what we call the official UNIA pledge to the flag. The flag in short, we say the RBG, red, black, green. All right. I commit my body, mind, and spirit to the protection, defense, and security of the red, black, and green. I dedicate my life to the redemption of Mother Africa and the liberation of her scattered black children. I accept for myself and my descendants the teachings of universal African nationalism, and I promise that our children will be instilled with the purpose and knowledge of themselves as African people, in order that the cause of our people will neither falter nor fail until all black people are free and united through one God, one aim, one destiny. I thank you, my brother.
Thank you so much.
Please give your family my respect, and give the movement my respect and respect of all the members of the UNIA ACL, and especially UNIA Woodson Banneker Jackson Bay Division here in Washington, D.C. We thank you very much, and friends for life, my brother.
Friends for life, my brothers. Thank you for having me, and I hope to catch up soon again. Take a good care of yourself and your families.
Yes, you do the same. Thank you.
Cheers, brothers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good one.